Okay.
James says many, and many means many things, right? We don't really know. So like more, at least two, or more than one. People claim that voting or that the voting public is unable to evaluate complex campaign issues. The television commercials for Reid in the national campaign, however, discuss complex campaign issues, and Reid is at present more popular than any other candidate. All right, so James here is saying, this is hilarious. So like he's like, this is our opinion of others, or like background information, and he's like, yeah, but this campaign does this and they're more popular. So what does James fail to consider, or what does James assume here? Like, what is James's flaw?
That the reason Reid is popular is because of the complex campaign issues, that it's not for some other reason.
Yeah, or that or like it's not that, like, or because he's most popular, he's assuming that they must be able to explain or be able to understand or
I
evaluate
mean,
the complex campaign.
yeah, that was the other thing I was confused by, and why I actually ended up having trouble with the answers. I was like, okay, just because Reid is discussing complex campaign issues doesn't mean that people are actually understanding it.
Yeah, or able to evaluate, right?
Yeah, are able to
Yeah.
evaluate it.
Like he's assuming that because he is more popular, that must mean that they're able to evaluate these complex things, when really, like, maybe the other candidates are just terrible and it doesn't even matter, right? Like it's so irrelevant. But okay, so you be Maria now.
Okay. Yes, Reid is the most popular. However, you are incorrect in claiming that this is because of Reid's discussion of complex campaign issues. Reid simply strikes the voters as the most competent and trustworthy candidate.
So what is Maria's conclusion here?
That James is wrong.
Yeah, she's saying like, hey, he's not most popular because they're able to do this. They're more popular because he's just competent and trustworthy. So which
Nicole,
one?
I have a question
Yes.
before you even get to the answers that sort of affected how I did the answers. So when I first read it, it almost seemed like they were actually saying different things, in the sense that it seemed James is saying people are unable to evaluate complex campaign issues, right? But then Maria doesn't say you're wrong because people can't evaluate what
So
Reid's saying.
James says many other people say that people are unable. James actually thinks that they are able to.
Right. So James thinks that people are able to evaluate what the complex campaign issues Reid is talking about, right? Or, I mean, does he even say that? That's why I was confused, because I was confused about.
Okay, so he thinks that, like, he's saying that okay, so I get what you're saying, like that, like
There's a difference, like a subtle difference between evaluating, knowing that some people are able to evaluate, versus just rediscussing it. Because just because we discuss a complaint campaign,
yes, I agree, and like but because he's saying like the television commercials for Reid and however discuss complex campaign issues, and he's more popular than any candidate. So you're right, he doesn't actually, like, we kind of make that assumption that he's assuming like because he's most popular, they're able to evaluate.
or that because he's discussing complex campaign issues, that means he can.
And he's most popular. It's like, how could he be popular if his campaign is discussing complex campaign issues?
Unless people are able to evaluate
yes,
this.
yes,
Right.
it's like a subtle assumption there that we go on. But then when Maria says, yes, Reid is the most popular, so she agrees that, yeah, he is more popular. However, you are incorrect in saying it's because that the campaign discusses complex campaign. Like, he's not. This is what we predicted was the flaw, right? We were right on. We're saying, hey, it's not because the campaign talks about complex campaign issues, it's because of this other reason. And so I would go into, I don't know if, at this point I don't know, like, what do they agree on, disagree on, but then I read it, I'm like, okay, so it's a strengthen question, so we want to strengthen what Maria is saying, that like, I would say, like, in a like, nobody even could, like, not one person, if I was going to strengthen what Maria is saying, I'm like, not one person could explain a complex campaign issue. Like that would strengthen it, right? Like if not one person in the world could do this. Or nobody people in a survey, people said that the commercials were not why they like to read or something like that.
Mhm.
Did you get this one
Well,
correct or did you miss this one?
I missed it because I overthought it. And I overthought it because I thought, well, there's a difference between just rediscussing campaign complex issues versus people being able to evaluate it. Because like in the real world, right? Like politicians discuss complex campaign issues all the time. Doesn't mean people actually understand it, right? And so I was confused about, is the thing
But
we're trying to support that people
we're
are
trying to support Maria's counter to James. So we just
Mhm.
want to, whatever Maria is
Right.
saying, we want to support. So Maria is saying that the reason he is most popular is because he's competent and trustworthy.
And not because of his discussion of complex campaign issues. So then why does it matter whether people are able to, like you just said, what you said was actually ended up being the correct answer, but why does it matter if people are able to evaluate or not? Because just because somebody discusses something doesn't mean you have to evaluate it. And Maria said nothing about evaluating. She just said you're wrong because
Um,
it's not because we
because
discussed
James
the
is
issue.
like James is alluding to
Uh-huh.
that like they're like clearly they're able to evaluate it because he's most popular. Like because it's a national campaign. So what are these are
Isn't that an assumption? I guess that's what I was confused
yes,
by.
no, I get what you're saying there. And as I'm saying is like I do see how critical you're being. I love how critical you're being, but I think at this point, what especially since it's two people talking and Maria responds and says you are incorrect, like we have to assume premises are true, and Maria is responding to James.
Mhm.
And like, why else would James say many people claim that people aren't able to do this?
Uh,
The
right.
TV
Unless he
commercials we
believes
read in the national campaign, however, discuss and more like why else would he say that unless that's what he
that's
thought?
true. Yeah, like the only reason he would say that is if he thinks, oh, people claim this, but it's not actually true. Like he doesn't. I guess he
Yeah,
doesn't have to
yeah,
literally
like
say
yeah,
that.
why else would he include that? Yeah.
So I guess he
There is
doesn't
a
have to
flaw
literally.
there. Like we don't
Yeah.
like I agree that your thing is a flaw too, but we're not trying to support James, we're trying to support Maria. So we're just gonna take whatever it is as true
Yeah.
and just try to support her.
So that's why I got this one wrong because when I read Maria's, and I was like, okay, this is what we're trying to support. I thought, okay, we don't even need something that talks about whether or not people evaluate. We just need something because that's not what Maria's talking about. She's just assuming it's not because of the fact that he simply had the discussion, and it doesn't matter whether people are able to evaluate it or not. That does that make sense? But
You guys raised discussion of
because she didn't
but
say you're
why would
incorrect,
like if people were discussing complex campaigns issues, like how could those help them if people can't understand them?
but it wasn't people. It was just read, right? Like, and people can't, or a politician
No,
can
no,
discuss
like for being
something.
popular. How could a candidate be pop like what like how like in order for it to not be because of Reed's discussion of complex campaign issues,
Mhm.
a way to strengthen that is by showing that people don't even understand what these things are.
But this is why I was confused. Why does it matter whether or not people understand? Because sometimes maybe people just vote for somebody who sounds smart without even understanding what they're saying, right? Like, I just,
You're
I
right.
hope.
You're right. You're right. But this isn't like we're not trying to guarantee it. We're just trying to strengthen it. And so
Mhm.
wouldn't it at least strengthen it if people couldn't understand it a little bit? Would it make it
Um,
more likely or less likely to be true if people can't actually understand what the people are saying?
I guess I just thought it was irrelevant because I thought what we're talking about is just the fact that Reed discusses campaign complex campaign issues and how that impacts people. And like, there are probably people who don't understand it, but think that he sounds really smart. And so maybe that's why they're voting for him because that happens in politics all the time.
No, I
That's
agree with what you're
what I was
saying.
thinking. Yeah.
Even like, okay, so let's go
This is
through.
why I sometimes get confused with the LSAT because I feel like sometimes I'm so critical and it feels like you're supposed to be that way, but then it ends up backfiring right
No,
now.
I went through a learning curve, the same one that you're describing right now, to be honest.
Really? So sometimes I never know, like, okay, sometimes it feels like I'm not being critical enough, like in the problems we discussed before where I couldn't find the flaw. Then other times it feels like I'm being too critical because I find a flaw
I
that
think
ends up
it's
making me get
going
it
to
wrong.
be, I think it's going to be from more exposure of studying at this level of intensity too. Like where you're going to become more familiar with what the LSAT does.
Yeah. And last time, this is exactly what happened. Last time I did so much practice, but I couldn't get a sense of when I'm being too critical and when I'm being not critical enough. And so I would just mess it up, if that makes sense.
Yes. Okay. So more, I'm going to read this again and see if I can pick up on anything else. So many people complain that the voting public is, I think it's also being open that there can be more than one right answer. So while like, yes, you found something that could have been critiqued, it's not the only thing that can be critiqued. And I think
Mhm.
you have to be more open-minded about what the flaws can be and how we can fix things. Like that
Mhm.
doesn't have to be the only thing that we fix. So like I'm thinking you've heard like when I read through these, like I pick up multiple things that could be the issue.
Mhm.
And I'm able like I read it and I think like could this help it? Like does that make sense?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's something too that we have to like continue to work on as well, is like there can be more than one way that we can
Yeah.
strengthen this.
Yeah,
And
I think I just
remember,
thought that the
strengthen
issue
questions is just you just
don't
have
have
to
to be
like on a
perfect.
strengthen. Yeah, they don't have to be perfect. And so
Yeah.
yes, like I hear what you're saying. Yes, technically they don't necessarily have to be able to understand it for it to be more popular. However, like in common sense, like does that strengthen it a little bit if they can't understand it? It doesn't guarantee it by any means, but I would say it moves the needle some.
Mhm.
Um, I would so like, let's look at our answer choices just for even options. So A,
Okay.
Reed's opponents are discussing. No, I don't care that they're discussing the same ideas.
And that's what I thought was the right answer because I was thinking, oh well, if other people are discussing the same things as him, then that proves that it's not because of him
So
discussing. Like he's not unique, if
what
that
does
makes sense.
some mean?
At least one, so it could just be one person. I mean, one
One
issue.
idea. And so
Yeah,
it's way too weak of an answer.
yeah, that makes sense.
B, Reed's opponents charge that Reed oversimplifies. They said that he
That's irrelevant
oversimplifies
for
them.
me.
Yeah, no, that's irrelevant. That doesn't mean that it's because he's more like he is competent and trustworthy. C, polling data shows that Reed's present popularity will probably no.
Also irrelevant, right?
Yeah, you're going to get less popular. That doesn't mean that you're currently popular because of being competent and trustworthy. D, polling data shows that I like how strong this is, more than 50% of voters cannot identify Reed's positions. Oh, I like that. That's not like that's saying that they don't even know where he stands on things. Like I
Mhm.
think that's even better than what we predicted, where you're saying like, oh, they just sound smart, so they like him, where this is saying like they don't know where
Isn't that okay? Yeah.
they don't even know like they don't even like when it's saying evaluate, they're not saying that they can evaluate the issues. They're saying evaluate in the sense of like knowing where this person stands on issues.
Mhm.
I like that's even better than our prediction. And then because like what if people can't like do you how like if people cannot identify where people stand on positions, do you think that like I mean imagine like I mean like I think that's even like that like is even hard to like fight against. Like people want to know where people stand on issues.
Mhm.
And
I
then
get. Yeah, I
yeah.
see.
Polling data shows that at least one of the voters yeah, no, we don't care that one of them. So yeah, our answer would definitely be D.
Mhm.